Hello, Mayhem makers. I'm Mindy with Quilting Mayhem, and today I want to show you a binding trick. So the Bernina foot special of the month is the 71 foot, which is called the lap foot. Now, it's meant for garments, but I will give a shout out to Shelly. I believe it's, oh God, see Shelly Sews. I forgot to look it up. She taught me a way of how to do a binding with that foot. So I'm going to show you how to use this number 71 foot to do machine binding. Now, so this is just a sample. It's not super pretty, it's very plain. But first thing to know, binding is sewn on the back, all right? So most traditional, you're doing your binding on the front, going to the back. So for those of you that might ask questions, I generally cut it 2.5 inches. I like a wider binding. I like having a little more room. You can do it 2 inch. I don't like having to really struggle to pull it all the way around, because I do fold it in half, press it, and then stitch it 1/4 inch to the back side, because I like machine binding. I don't have time for hand binding. Hand, 4-letter word. So, all right, keep in mind that's what I've done. I did just a basic join, so I just have a straight seam join, because this is just a sample. So I wasn't doing anything fancy, so don't come at me if you see the join and it's not pretty. It's a sample. We're just showing you the technique of this foot. Now, something I will show you. Where did I put the foot that I had gauged?
Do it right in front of you.
Oh, under my sample. I need more caffeine apparently. So, I did sew this binding on with the 97D foot, which is a 1/4 inch foot. If you have a 5mm machine, then you might be using a 57 foot. But what I like about this, what I wanted to show you, is on these feet, there are notches. So there is a notch that shows you where the needle lands. There's a notch at a 1/4 inch out. And so when I do sew my binding on, I do stop a 1/4 inch before the end, and then I stitch diagonally a 45-degree line towards the corner of my quilt, my project, whatever it is. So I stop a 1/4 inch early, and that notch, I just stop at that first notch in that foot, pivot that project with the needle down, and then I just stitch 45 degrees. And that's what I love about these machines, like the 7 series that have that hover mode. I can stop it, needle down, that foot will pop up in the hover mode, so I can just pivot that project, stitch straight off of it at a 45-degree angle. All right, and then I will do my fold. And so it's a simple 45-degree fold. I have other tutorials that show you how to do that. If you need something more detailed, let me know. I'll gladly do it. And then notice I have cut the corners off. So to make sure that I get nice clean corners of my binding, I like to cut that little bit of excess so that when I do my fold, see if I can do this backwards, I can do it nice and cleanly, and there's not a lot of bulk in that point, so that point can be a little crisper, won't be quite as rounded out. Oh, there we go. Right, fingers kind of in the way there. And a lot of times I may use like a wonder clip and clip it down. I don't want to use adhesives or anything else to do this binding, because I'm going to use this foot to help me pull that binding over. So, as we come to the machine, you are going to tell it you're using the 71 foot. We are using the 9mm foot on here. I am going to take that needle and I'm going to push it over to the left, all right? Because I want that stitch to come pretty close to where I sewed the binding down. Have you got screen glare on this?
A little bit.
A little bit? Yeah, people will see, because we're going to focus over here. Maybe come and go top down at an angle if you can. Trying to make gauge be fancy with some technology. So, the nice thing about the 71 foot is it's got this bevel edge in here. So I take that binding and I just kind of make it fold it over until it's got that nice crease in there. So I don't have any pinches under here behind here. I do have my needle over, so it's supposed to stitch this outer edge. And because we are doing this as a top stitch, I'm going to change my stitch length to be a little wider. So anywhere between like 2.85 to 3, depending how you like your top stitch, is how you're going to be. And then I just kind of start in the middle here. I can put my foot down if I want. And you can kind of decide. I've got it, if you can see, maybe a little further in. You can scooch it back out a little bit. This is where I can kind of play to see where I want that binding to land. But it's definitely covering that stitch. it will come pretty close to the stitch on the back. Keep in mind it's not always going to be dead on, depending how you have your needle set and if your stitching goes kind of crazy, if you don't stay quite straight. But that foot's just going to keep folding that binding over. Another thing to note is I do press my binding. Once I stitch it on, I have stray threads out of there, I do like to press it outwards so it's giving me as much to work with as I can to pull over. But I'm just going to keep letting that foot do that. As I come to the corner, I do try to kind of hold it down. Notice I got my 45 out here. I'm lined up with that stitch. What I do end up doing is I will kind of pull it out from under that foot, and then I can fold that binding back in the way I want it. Probably isn't going to show in this camera very well. This is where like an awl, a stiletto, any kind of tool for poking at it, holding it would help. I of course didn't grab one, but I can keep stitching. I can stop, I can let that foot pop up so I can make sure that what I've put under here still fits. Yeah, this is where you definitely want an awl. And then as soon as I see it touch that other one, I can pivot, I can slide it back in, pick up where I left off, and just start sewing again. And you become a little speed demon like me. Alright, so we're gonna, that's really all it takes. Super quick, super easy. And I would have done better if I had my awl, but notice, nice clean stitch. Got it back in control here. If you had an awl, it would be fine. Now this is partially in the binding. If you wanted it further in the seam allowance, you would just make it go all the way over to like 4. So you want to do a lot of testing, because if you're really OCD and you want it to drop in there, at least 3 over, maybe 4, so that you get it where it may sit in there the way you really want it. So here, we'll try, we're at 4. And it just takes a lot of playing, and a lot of it comes down to how much you pull over into that seam. And that's why we use sample pieces like this to play with it first. So, nice clean seam, and it's still a little bit in. So I would probably even go all the way to 5, and maybe not pull this quite as tight so that you match it up. So, and generally I don't have a really stark color. Usually my thread is matching, so you don't notice it as much. But that's what I love this foot for, because it is just nice and easily pulling that binding material over for you. As you see, it likes to follow that curve, and that way you're not taking and having to pull it over and do, you know, a gajillion wonder clips or glue or anything else. It's just going to help you pull that fabric over and stitch it down. All right, so that's how easy that foot can be. It is on sale. It's 25% off this month. And like I said, it is also for garments, for making nice seams on your pants. So those side seams, you'll see those are used with that foot also. So it has more than one use to it, which I love. But if you're quilty like me, binding is where it's at for that foot. I do love it. It is one of the top ones I recommend. That and the number 10, which is the other common one that people use for binding. And so you will see tutorials from me on YouTube on how to use either one for binding. So I hope you have a lovely day. Keep on stitching.